Lightning splits the tropical night sky over Nassau as the lights flicker in FTX's high-rise command center. An urgent message flashes on one of dozens of monitors. Billions are missing. Sam Bankman-Fried stands frozen, staring at the code that holds the answer, an answer he hoped no one would ever find. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, and if you love scam-related stories like this, subscribe to ScamSphere as we dive into the biggest crypto collapse in history. For years, Sam Bankman-Fried seemed invincible. A lanky teenager in a t-shirt, he spoke of decentralized utopias and ran his business from offices in the Bahamas. By his mid-20s, he was already a billionaire crypto mogul. A graduate of MIT and once a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree. He launched FTX in 2019, and by early 2022, it had become a global powerhouse, valued at over $32 billion. Venture capitalists poured in nearly $2 billion by January 2022, convinced FTX was a fortress protecting digital fortunes. Glory was everywhere. Super Bowl ads, a deal to rename a stadium, and social media praise from celebrities made Sam a symbol of success. He had worn his philanthropic persona like a badge of honor. Sam boasted about donating hundreds of millions to charitable causes and preached effective altruism as his guiding star. He even taught crypto seminars and rubbed elbows with politicians. Behind the scenes, though, this generosity may have been the deepest deception of all. Charities lined up to meet the White Knight, while in the private ledgers, Sam quietly funneled money to fund his own gamble. Beneath the hype, however, FTX was running on smoke and mirrors. The company never released audited financial statements. Accounts were scribbled on scraps and hidden behind paywalls. When questioned, Sam shrugged it off with confidence. "Trust the code, not the paperwork," he would quip. But in confidential spreadsheets lay a secret. Alameda Research, a hedge fund Sam had founded in 2017, was secretly borrowing billions of dollars from FTX's customer accounts. Regulators would later discover that Alameda was allowed to run a negative balance on FTX, effectively using customer funds as its own line of credit. Trouble had been brewing for months. In May 2022, the collapse of a so-called stablecoin wiped out nearly $40 billion in crypto market value. The fallout hit Alameda hard, leaving massive losses on its books. In the aftermath, Alameda quietly took out an $8 billion loan from FTX. At the time, nobody outside the inner circle noticed, but it would soon prove to be a critical lead in the conspiracy. That hidden transaction was the first domino in a chain reaction. On November 2, 2022, the facade finally cracked open. A cryptocurrency news site reported a bombshell. Alameda's balance sheet consisted almost entirely of FTX's own token, FTT. In effect, Sam had been backing all of FTX's promises with a coin he controlled. The revelation hit like a grenade. Rival CEO Changpeng Zhao of Binance announced he was liquidating $580 million worth of FTT. It was crypto's version of shouting fire. In a crowded theater, and panic ensued. Within hours, FTX customers raced to withdraw their funds. Over $1 billion flooded out of the exchange that day. Sam scrambled to calm the storm. On November 8th, he announced a rescue deal. FTX would be acquired by Binance, a move he claimed would protect customers and stabilize the system. For a brief moment, hope glimmered. But by the next morning, Binance's CEO abruptly backed out. After a quick review of FTX's books revealed too much chaos, the deal was off. Sam's last lifeline had vanished. His smug grin on the livestream could no longer hide the panic rising within him. The panic spread like wildfire. On November 9th, FTX halted all withdrawals. Merchants, traders, and even pensioners who had entrusted savings to FTX suddenly found their accounts frozen. It was crypto's version of a bank run. People around the globe watched helplessly as FTX's website displayed a stark message: withdrawals disabled. By November 11, 2022, FTX filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The office doors in Nassau stood empty, and Sam quietly resigned as CEO. He was replaced by John J. Ray III, the veteran who had sorted out Enron's wreckage. The high-tech fortress had collapsed overnight. Inside the wreckage, investigators found chaos. Ray later told reporters he had never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. Accounting. Records were found under mattresses and behind couches. As forensic accountants dug through the data, a horrifying picture emerged. Alameda owed FTX roughly $8 billion in bogus loans. Every missing dollar was traced back to secret transfers and reckless bets. The promised transparency had turned out to be a house of cards built on lies. In the early morning of December 12, 2022, Bahamian police quietly arrested Sam Bankman-Fried at his penthouse. The headlines exploded worldwide. The crypto wunderkind, who once claimed he would save the world, was now in handcuffs. He was flown to New York, still insisting to reporters that he had done nothing wrong. But the U.S. indictment told a different story. Charges included wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Sam, wearing a slightly bemused expression, suddenly looked very ordinary as he faced the press. Meanwhile, another bombshell dropped. Caroline Ellison, Alameda's one-time CEO and Sam's former girlfriend, had already cut a deal with investigators. She pleaded guilty to fraud charges and agreed to testify. In court filings, Caroline described in chilling detail how Sam personally directed the misuse of customer funds. Every incriminating text message and ledger entry she revealed painted him as the mastermind. The final piece of the puzzle was falling into place, and Sam's defenses were crumbling fast. Millions of customers watched in stunned silence. Their accounts and their trust had been shattered. Regulators and media demanded answers, but the full story was still hidden. The first chapter of the FTX saga had ended in catastrophe. Far from over, however, the true depth of this deception remained in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Months later in downtown Manhattan, the FTX saga took center stage in a federal courtroom. Sam Bankman-Fried, once celebrated as crypto's boy genius, now faced a jury that would decide his fate. Prosecutors filled the room with piles of evidence, spreadsheets, chat logs, and recordings of video calls. Each item painted a damning picture of missing billions and laws bent beyond breaking. The man who had once talked about giving away his wealth now had to explain where those fortunes had gone. Inside the silent courtroom, every pair of eyes followed the prosecutors as they laid out the case. Evidence on screens like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle of deceit. The charges against Bankman-Fried were sweeping. By the time opening statements began, he faced counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, and campaign finance violations. Prosecutors painted him as the puppet master of the scheme. They said he had treated customer deposits like a personal ATM, funneled cash into Alameda's risky bets, and even funded political campaigns through a web of shell companies. They alleged that millions meant for senators and super PACs had all come from FTX's coffers, laundered through layers of banks to influence regulation in Washington. The most explosive testimony came from his inner circle. Caroline Ellison, former CEO of Alameda and Sam's ex-girlfriend, took the stand and described what she had seen. In a flat voice, she recounted late-night messages from Bankman-Fried instructing her to move customer funds to cover massive losses, slipping them into hidden folders labeled with innocuous names. She explained how they falsified ledgers to keep the books balanced. The jury watched closely as she laid out each step of the deception. Each revelation another damning stroke on Sam's canvas of lies. Witness after witness piled on. Former FTX engineers and accountants described a culture of casual recklessness. One testified that Alameda effectively had an unlimited credit line inside FTX. It could gamble with customer funds while no ordinary user could. Auditors revealed that every internal alarm had been disabled, so no warning would ring if balances fell into the red. Even employees joked about it. Text messages between Sam and colleagues included giddy mentions of buying another yacht or paying off credit cards with client money. The defense could only listen in despair. For every lie they offered, prosecutors had an answer ready. After weeks of testimony, it was time for a verdict. On November 2, 2023, the jury returned to the courtroom. One by one, the charges were read aloud. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom held its breath. Sam Bankman-Fried sat stone-faced as the verdict was announced. The next morning's headlines screamed, "Crypto King convicted." The once irrepressible CEO, who during the trial had paced and gestured anxiously, now sat still and pale. He realized his empire of accounts and promises had collapsed into ruin. There was one more twist before the chapter closed. Bankman-Fried had initially been granted bail on $250 million Australian dollars bond, one of the largest in U.S. history, and was released to his parents' home to await trial. But in August 2023, it emerged that he had violated that trust. It was revealed that Sam had secretly sent Caroline Ellison's personal diary entries to a reporter, hoping to cast doubt on her credibility. Judges called it an egregious act of witness tampering. His bail was revoked immediately, and Sam was shackled and sent to jail to await sentencing. The punishment was swift. On March 28, 2024, the judge handed down the sentence: 25 years in federal prison. The gavel's echo seemed to absorb Sam's last protests. His lawyers vowed to appeal, and Sam offered apologies that sounded hollow to many. The judge told him that his crimes were enormous and that adults must be held to account. As Sam was led away, he realized everything he had built was gone. The judge said there was no easy way to fix what he had done. Meanwhile, those who helped convict him saw very different outcomes. Caroline Ellison, who had become a key star witness, received just 2 years in prison. By her sentencing, she had given lengthy testimony and handed over records that helped recover assets. The judge noted in court that in his 30-year career, he had never seen a cooperator more forthcoming. Ellison was also ordered to forfeit about $11 billion in assets, essentially emptying her bank account to repay defrauded customers. Other co-conspirators who pleaded guilty saw lighter sentences if they cooperated, while others awaited their fate. Outside the courtroom, the fallout rippled across the crypto world. Regulators in the U.S. and abroad held FTX up as Exhibit A for why exchanges needed oversight. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies dipped immediately after the conviction, as traders feared further crackdowns. Over the following months, some prices recovered, but trust in the system had been shaken. Administrators in FTX's bankruptcy case scrambled to recover whatever they could. By early 2023, they had found about $5 billion to distribute to creditors and customers. But for hundreds of thousands of users, their accounts were still little more than lost numbers on a screen. In the end, Sam Bankman-Fried's downfall became a cautionary tale. The boy who once said he planned to do nothing ended up doing everything and paying a steep price. As he was led out of the courthouse under flashing cameras, his signature casual confidence was gone. He knew the world had seen behind the curtain. Outside, bigger questions lingered. What would FTX's collapse mean for the future of crypto? Who would profit and who would pay for this mess? For now, those answers would have to wait. This chapter may have closed, but ScamSphere is just getting started. In our next episode, we will dive into another twisting tale of greed and deception hiding in plain sight. If you want to be there for our next investigation, subscribe to ScamSphere now, because in the world of scams, the game is far from over.